everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my April wrap-up. And I know I had said I didn't want to do wrap-ups anymore, but I only have a few books to talk about that I haven't talked about in April. So I figured I'd just do a wrap-up of the books that I haven't yet talked about, or I haven't talked about in depth. But just to give a general recap of how the reading went in the month of April, it went really well. I read a total of 12 books. And 4 of those, the first 4 that I finished, were part of my vacation reading vlog. So those 4 I'm not going to talk about today because I've reviewed them previously. And then I've read 3 books for the BookTube Prize in April. I read Charlie Hustle, The Siege, and Slow Noodles. So I'm reading for the nonfiction category. Those are the 3 books I read in April. I have 3 books to read in May because I had a total of 6 to read in my category, but I'm not going to talk about those now either because I can't talk about them until after the round is over at the end of May. And then there was the Book Naturalist Book Club pick, Fathoms, which I reviewed in a separate video by itself. So that all those books, those 8 books, I have already talked about in detail, so I don't need to go over those at the moment. So I'm just going to talk about the 4 books that I haven't yet reviewed, and that should make this video a lot more manageable, shouldn't it? So the rest of my reading, not entirely, but mostly is made up of more fun stuff. I would call it, you know, my giving my brain a break type of reading, and I need that kind of reading to be mixed in with the heavier stuff that I read for the BookTube Prize or for other purposes. And I've really been trying to lean into that sort of what I call brain candy reading in 2025, because I think it's a good mix for me to mix, you know, my more serious reading with stuff that gives me that same sort of relaxation that you might get from watching sitcoms on TV. I don't watch a lot of TV, so this is my this is my preferred method of relaxation. So for the first one of these books, and 2 of these I don't have physical copies currently, so I will put a picture up here. The first one is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, and I believed I talked about this briefly in another video, but I finished this one like the second week of April. This was book number 3 in the Empyrean series, which is a romantasy series, a fantasy with romance in it. The first book is Fourth Wing, the second book is Iron Flame, and then the third book, Onyx Storm. So I read that book and I've since lent it to my niece, so she's currently reading it, and it was a fun time. I really enjoy this series, as I've talked about. It is not great literature. There are, you know, there are problems with it. But I enjoy it for the dragons. There are some excellent dragon characters in this series, and I really find them to be great fun. I also like the fact that the young woman who's the main protagonist, Violet, is a young woman trying to find her own way in the world. She's discovering what her strengths and weaknesses are. She has, you know, she has chronic illness, and she has to learn that's not going to keep her from doing the things that she wants to do, although she does have to modify how she does things. And I find that ingenuity to be quite interesting to read about. There is a lot of sex in these books. If that's not something that you care to read about, you know, probably isn't for you. But I'm having a great time reading the series, and I don't know when the next one's going to come out, but I will be here for it when it does. So yeah, I understand all the hype around the Fourth Wing series. I then read a romance novel with my romance buddies, Doris and Katie, and that was Always Remember by Mary Balogh. I hadn't read a Mary Balogh book in decades, I think. I used to read a lot of her historical romance novels. She was an author that my mother and I both really enjoyed reading, like I said, years ago. And so we decided to take this one on. It's part of a series, although I think it's book 3 in the series. So it's Ravenswood or Ravens something is the series. But anyway, this follows a couple. The young woman is named Jennifer, and I don't remember what his name is, but she is in a wheelchair, which was quite interesting, quite not something that you normally read about in historical romance. But this is very gentle romance. Like only one sex scene in the entire book came at the end, and it was very, very, very tame sex scene. So this was a much different experience than Onyx Storm. And it was just both the main characters were a little bit older. Jennifer is in her like mid to late 20s, and he's a little bit older. He has a daughter. His wife has passed away, and they're just nice to each other. And there isn't any big drama involved. It's just two adult people getting to know one another, realizing that they're perfect for one another, and just being like, you know what? The heck with all these problems that people are trying to throw in our way. Let's just do this thing. And I found that to be, extremely nice to read about. It just was a nice time. I really enjoyed the time that I spent with Always Remember. So then I read another nonfiction book, and this was a buddy read with my friend Rachel, and it was Unbowed by Wangari Maathai. Now, Wangari Maathai was an activist from Kenya. She started a nonprofit organization which was dedicated to planting trees in Kenya and trying to reforest a lot of that country after industrialization and sort of that post-colonial period where much of the forested land in Kenya was cut down. And in the process of becoming very involved in this nonprofit and trying to help small communities and small villages rebuild their environment, she also became an activist for women's rights because she kept running up against a government that was determined to keep women in their place. And they did not want to listen to the advice that she had to give. And so she became quite adept at nonviolent resistance, and she encouraged and inspired others to follow along behind her, and really worked hard for democratic principles to be instituted in Kenya. And she is really inspirational. And her life story, as told in her own words, because this is her memoir, was just so wonderful to read about. And the book does go through her childhood, and it talks about her parents and her grandparents and sort of her community, her village that she came from, and then how she sort of didn't take the beaten path. She had members of her family that really encouraged her to get an education. She wound up winning a prize and being able to go to the United States to college, and how that influenced her. But it was her coming of age was in the mid 20th century. And that experience that she had of being in the United States and seeing civil rights protests and experiencing how Black people were treated in the United States really informed what she did in Kenya, because she was in the United States during the time period of the civil rights movement. She came away from that experience with this idea that you could fight for your rights, and that it was important to speak out what you believed, and that there was room for positive change. And I wonder if she had come to the United States in a different time period, she might not have gotten that particular she might not have had that particular experience. And so I found that to be quite really interesting to read about, and also quite inspirational. So really glad that I read Unbowed, and would highly recommend it, particularly if you're interested in women's rights movements, how people have organized and participated in nonviolent activism for trying to encourage their countries to follow democratic principles, and also her environmental efforts to improve the environment and bring back some of the natural habitats of her home country. Just very inspiring person. So highly recommend Unbowed. And then last but not least was another fun book, and that was Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. And this is another fantasy book. This is cozy fantasy. It's such a really nice object. It has this lovely artwork on the inside flap, and it's just got these beautiful blue sprayed edges, and it was just so much fun to read this book. It has these really fun ink drawings at the beginning of every chapter. But basically this book is following two women, one of whom is the Queen's assassin, and the other is a mage, and they have fallen in love, and they have decided that they no longer want to be an assassin and a mage respectively, and that they want to go off and open a tea and bookshop. And so that is what they do. And the queen is quite reluctant to let her assassin go, and the mage is the mage for like the entire country, not country, but continent, I guess you would say, in this fantasy world. And so also she can't just walk away from her job. There are dragons in this story as well, although not as much fun as the dragons in the Empyrean series, but they're still pretty interesting. There are lots of plants and tea and lovely other supporting characters around these two women as they try to establish their business and set up their life together. And it's just lovely. There's some romance, there's found family, all those kind of cozy things. It's very reminiscent of Bookshops and Bone Dust and that sort of vein of cozy fantasy. So if you liked those books, this is a series. This is book 1. There are several others in the series that have been published so far. I am sure I'm going to pick up book 2 at some point. I can't say a lot happens in this book, but again, it was just a nice time. I enjoyed myself while I read this, and it gave me some much needed relaxation. So that's I guess that's the key word for a lot of my April reading this year was, relaxation and coziness. I was really leaning hard into those aspects of my reading at the end of April, and I regret nothing. So that is my wrap up for the month of April. I hope you've all been finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.